just give it to, I was going to say I'll give it to 11:01 on my clock, but it just turned 1. So let me start. Carol, I think you've started the recording. Let's see, Sean's just joined as well. So just here today, we're going to talk just a little bit around transaction, and I guess in terms of the attendees in the call, we've got some existing kind of BlackLine customers, which will certainly focus will be on this call today. We've also got some people that don't use BlackLine, so again, we're trying to, I guess, cover all bases in terms of what we're about to share here. Now, if I click on just to the agenda, so we're going to try and cover quite a lot, to be honest, in this kind of 30 minutes. So a little bit around Continuate. I'll introduce myself and also Zach, who's on the call. Then just a few slides just around transaction matching, I guess just trying to paint the picture a little bit in terms of what it is, what it does, some of the benefits of BlackLine, and some of the hints, tips, and best practice. And then what I'm also looking to do is actually go into the system and kind of bring this to life. Now, we do only have kind of 30 minutes in this call, so I certainly won't be able to show everything within the demo, but I'm going to aim to cover off a little bit of the build work, just to kind of give you a flavour for how this is. And to be honest, it's relatively simple. And then also just show the process also from a kind of preparer perspective as well. Now, there will be some time, hopefully at the end, for some questions. As I mentioned there, I think we've got the mics muted just now, but if there's any questions as we go, please put them into the chat. We've got a couple of people tracking those questions, so we'll try and answer them during the call. If we can't answer them, we'll pick them up at the end, basically, as well. So if I kick off a little bit around Continuate, so I'm not sure if everybody is aware of exactly who Continuate are, but here's just a kind of one slider on this. So we are a boutique consultancy, and we're effectively made up of, I guess, a group of transformation experts, system experts, and the majority of us at Continuate are also kind of qualified accountants. Now you'll see we are a BlackLine partner. You'll see the silver badge at the top, and in the past we have won a couple of BlackLine awards, albeit they were a couple of years ago, and we also got shortlisted for some of the MCA awards this year as well. Now, we're really a consulting partner, not just of BlackLine, but actually some of the other software providers as well. We also look at some RTR transformation services and also some work around the shared services. Now, we do see ourselves as different from some of the other kind of consultancy groups that are maybe partners of some of the software providers. And there is 3 bullets here, but I think maybe just to wrap it up in one sentence, at the end of the day here, we're not, I guess our ethos is not here. We're not here to do a technical deploy and effectively tick a box. We want to make sure that actually what we're delivering does fundamentally make a difference, and that's very much around the adoption. So things like transaction matching, we want to make sure that once effectively the project stops, that process is set up well enough so effectively it can be maintained and it can carry on, and effectively it doesn't kind of drop away. So as I say, that's probably the key difference just around Continuate to some of our competitors out there. As I say, I think we're very much focused on that adoption rather than just making sure we've done a kind of technical deployment. Now, just quickly here, just a couple of introductions. So I've got myself and Zach here. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on these slides, but I've been using BlackLine for kind of 10 years, multiple projects. I was actually a customer initially, and effectively been working on different deployments over the kind of last 10 years. I've done end-to-end deliveries on transaction matching, as I say, some of the other modules as well. I also looked at some new implementations, or actually gone back and optimized some other kind of clients, I guess, that perhaps the first time round it didn't quite go so well. So again, just trying to improve the existing process. Hands up, I've never been an end user of BlackLine, but as I say, prior to BlackLine, I also worked in financial reporting for 10 years as well. We've also got Zach. Zach, I'll just cover your introduction off here just in the interest of time. But again, Zach has got a huge amount of experience with BlackLine, a bit of background around the kind of transformation and the reconciliation process. 3 years of actually implementing BlackLine, and Zach's also performed the kind of system admin role within the system as well. It's worth mentioning Zach had the misfortune, unfortunately, of working with myself in the past as well. So as I say, a huge amount of experience just between the two of us around kind of transaction matching. So maybe just to explain a little bit what transaction matching is, and I'm sure you're probably all aware of this, but let's just make sure everyone's clear. So effectively, transaction matching is used in accounting, finance, and business operations to compare and reconcile at least 2 sets of transactions. So really, we're doing a comparison between 2 data sets. And ultimately what we're trying to identify from that is any discrepancies, errors, or kind of potential fraud, around that process. And obviously it depends a little bit on the use case in terms of that kind of fraud aspect. Now, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of kind of use cases out there. And you'll see here, I've just got a handful of these, and I've kind of split them here between the financial and the non-financial ones. I would imagine 90% of BlackLine's customers very much focus on those kind of financial ones. So, things like your bank statements, your GL, accounts payable, receivable, intercompany, chargeback, third-party sellers, whatever it would be. But as I say, there probably is a huge scope there for some of the non-financial ones. So, effectively doing a comparison, across some of the examples that we see here. So things like customer orders, shipping records, stock checks, weight volume, contractual rates, kind of HR checks and validations. And a lot of that, to be honest, is really comparing effectively two systems, which is really what transaction matching kind of does. Now, on this next slide here, I've got a very kind of basic example of what transaction matching looks like. So on this diagram, you can see we've got kind of two source systems, so A and B. Now, again, they can be internal, external. There's no hard classification of these. As I say, BlackLine is, I guess, system agnostic in that sense, and that really it's just a set of data. Now we can, I guess in other examples there are like three-way matches. BlackLine can certainly handle those ones as well. But as I say, I just wanted to present a kind of basic example here. Then what we've got is effectively the bit in the middle here, which is really your kind of matching system. So it's BlackLine that we're here to talk about today. Or I think for a kind of probably a fairly large number of organizations, that process still sits within Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets or those types of processes. So it tends to be kind of highly manual. Then we've got effectively the matching that occurs. And as I say, this can either be done automatically or manually, obviously in the spreadsheets. I would assume that there'll be some EUCs out there with some macros built into that type of thing. So there's maybe a bit of automation in there. And again, maybe that's probably one of the main advantages of going to one of the systems, of which BlackLine is one of these, where we can drive a lot of that automatically. And ultimately, it's reducing the manual effort from end users and really freeing them up to probably to do a bit more kind of value add kind of activities. Now, this bottom box at the bottom, effectively, it's the outputs from that process. So we've obviously got the kind of the match transactions. And then probably more critically, the unmatched. So it's the ones that effectively we don't have the other side of it, and they are the ones where effectively require some follow-up actions from the person kind of operating that process, which is really the bottom box there. So follow-up actions and escalations, and generally speaking, that's where we see a lot of the MI produced around this process. How many unmatched transactions do we have? What do they relate to? What's the aging buckets for those? Should we be concerned? Are we getting to a position of some sort of write-off, on the P&L or something like that? So as I say, that's a very kind of basic examples. There's certainly much more elaborate ones, and certainly much more elaborate ones that continue if delivered. But as I say, that's in its most basic sense, that is effectively how kind of transaction matching kind of works. Now, there's a slide here just on common challenges. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of, and have felt the pain of some of these. So, existing processes can be highly manual and spreadsheet-based with limited automation, if any automation within there. There can also be a kind of dependency around EUCs. So I guess if somebody does have an Excel spreadsheet and they've decided to take it further and built some macros around that, that can, I guess when it works, it's brilliant, but again, there can be some challenges around that process in relation to, maybe an individual's built that EUC, they leave the company, something changes within, the inputs or something like that. And again, it's a bit more work. So, just a bit of a risk around that. We also quite often see some challenges around kind of data format inconsistency, and that probably comes in two ways. So sometimes, different file types aren't always the easiest to compare. And things like decimal places, sometimes the US uses commas instead of dots, that type of thing. And I'm sure we've all felt the pain at some point in our careers around date format. So again, that comparison between the kind of the US and more of the kind of European view as well. Generally speaking, we do also see some challenges around some data quality or sometimes some completeness of that, coming from the underlying systems. High volume of data. I'm old enough to remember back in the day when Excel only had 65,000 lines, for example. Those types of things begin to impact some of the processes as well. We do see sometimes, a regular requirement for repeat data refreshes. So, data gets refreshed every hour. That can be a bit of a challenge if your process is kind of a bit manual and you don't have like an integration going into a system such as BlackLine. Also some multi-currency requirements. So I don't know, maybe one side is in GBP, the other's in US dollars, but you need some sort of calculation basically to try and get it to tie back. So again, that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes within Excel. And also here we've got like a lack of a hook or other consistencies which actually allow the matching to be formed. Now this is probably whether you've got a system or not. Ultimately, we do need those hooks. In terms of just being able to actually perform the matching as well. We also quite often see a bit of a lack of ownership, probably very much with those kind of Excel-based processes, where maybe the file is saved on SharePoint, and maybe it doesn't quite get the visibility or the attention that it deserves. In terms of some of that escalation, and then again, potentially end up in the position of kind of P&L write-offs. And then the final one here is around IT. So maybe some sort of extract built or report built or something like that. And there quite often can be some challenges with IT because I don't know, they're doing like a system ERP upgrade or something like that, and we're basically told you have to wait 6 to 9 months or something before we're able to effectively get on with building that. Now I think BlackLine probably covers off quite a lot of this, and some of the actual more recent functionality that BlackLine have brought in will hopefully try and cover off some of this. So fundamentally, the biggest benefit is really the better focus of users' time and effort, focusing on the exceptions rather than the general churn of entry. So we look at the automatic matching, and effectively BlackLine would take care of that sort of work, and then we're just down to hopefully a handful of exceptions that the end users need to do. So really just better focusing in their time. Now within BlackLine, as I say, we have that automation of the matching process, and it's referred to as pass rules. That's effectively where the criteria sits for the matching. We also see reduced human error, again, because of that kind of automation, and I'd actually argue as well because it's system-based, again, there's maybe a bit more control around that than what we see in some kind of Excel files and so on as well. We can also have automatic integration of that kind of data from the source system, so whether that's through an API, SFTP, whatever the connection type would be, and again, that's just allowing us a bit more control in terms of the data that we're actually putting into the matching itself. And I think also allows for the more regular kind of repeat refreshes, if that's required as part of the requirements. BlackLine can certainly hold a huge amount of data. Certainly, I know that there's clients that BlackLine have that will load in millions of transactions every day. I think personally, the largest I've seen is hundreds of thousands. And we've never really had an issue with that. And again, goes back to my previous point around some of the limitations, maybe with things like Excel and so on as well. We've also got the ability to combine and transform data within BlackLine as well to ultimately optimize the underlying data tables where all of the matching sits. And actually, just over the last month or so, BlackLine have, I guess, released some new functionality to partners. Certainly so far, we're effectively now like a kind of preloading layer where we can do some additional data manipulation before the data actually gets into BlackLine as well. So again, just allowing a bit more flexibility kind of around that process. We're also able to link unmatched transactions at month end to the equivalent balance sheet reconciliation. So we're really kind of driving that end-to-end process. And ultimately then we can, identify areas of risk around that. It may be timing if it's a couple of days, but, maybe if, we start seeing transactions sitting in a bank statement or cash book for 30 days, that's when we begin to get a bit more concerned. And, actually, there's some follow-up action kind of required as well. We can also link transactions to perform an actual daily reconciliation. Again, BlackLine have brought out some more recent functionality, which they refer to as the high frequency reconciliations, but effectively it's performing, that kind of daily reconciliation process as well. Through the matching, we're also able to create some journal entries. Now that's through AGDs, where effectively we're able to, load data and manipulate that and such a way that ultimately we're getting, to what the actual journal entry should be, and then BlackLine can ultimately post that back into the other ERP. We've also got the ability of kind of management and other senior stakeholders to ultimately view that data in real time. And now that could be through the match set itself or through some reporting as well, which is quite honestly fantastic in BlackLine in terms of all the data points that we can do. But And fundamentally, what we're trying to do here is get some earlier identification of risk. And there may or may not be some potential fraud around that, but ultimately, as I say, risk is really the key driver kind of for this kind of process. Now, just some quick hints, tips, and I guess some best practice. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I know we've got a kind of combination of different people in terms of their potential BlackLine journey on the call just now. But I think first and foremost, is the kind of the structure of that transaction matching and all of the tables that sit at the back end, and I guess how we do some of those enrichments as well. So, and that's probably really where Continuate as an organization will provide, the real value for this. You'll see in the second half of this demo when I'm actually in BlackLine. Setting up a match set or loading tables in is not particularly difficult, but it's actually that architecture piece and actually understanding, should I do some, data manipulation before the system? Should I do it in the system? Should I do it through some pass rules? And there's different options around that, and that's really where I guess Continuous experience would pay around that. We certainly need some well understood matching logic, and that would generally come from the business. Again, it's very hard to build rules without having somebody with that kind of specific knowledge of that. I've certainly been involved in projects in the past where actually there's been a lack of knowledge around that, and it's doable. We can certainly go and spin up some rules, but it's just a bit more testing involved kind of through that process as well. We also strongly recommend to utilize the different match types. You'll see this again in a minute when I go into the system, but we've got manual, suggested, and automatic within BlackLine. And again, that can identify some areas of improvement as well. Can we get a suggested rule to an automatic? That type of stuff as well. So it's a lot of kind of data analysis involved in this process. The next one here is don't expect the system to automatically resolve historical backlogs. Now, if you do have a historical backlog, we've got the rules in place. The rules would 100% do that matching, but it's not, unfortunately, a silver bullet always going to a system and expecting that will fix all of the issues. As I say, we would still need that logic within there. I can't stress enough that test is certainly the way to go, especially with transaction matching more than some of the other kind of BlackLine modules, just because of the level of detail around the rules and so on as well. So again, just the more thorough the testing, whether it be a new case or you're trying to improve an existing match set, ultimately better the end result as well. Also, when we do a deployment, we highly recommend, and we do reinforce this through various stage gates and so on, and certainly in the hypercare ones for sure, which is don't stop adding rules that go live. Ultimately, this should be an evolving process. You may start to get some additional types of transactions in or something like that. So again, there should be a periodic review effectively, of the process, and review the matching outputs, and again, as I say, identify those improvement opportunities. And then the final thing here is maybe more from a technology perspective. And again, it's to keep on top of things like some changes. An example here is the CAMT053 files. So I guess traditionally it'd be the MT940s that would provide like the bank statement and all the details around it. That's just changing, and effectively they're being superseded by CAMT053 files. And also things like if you are an existing BlackLine customer, the BlackLine release notes as well. BlackLine, for example, doing a bit of work around AI just now. And that's really where we find these things out, is in the release notes, and they also do some webinars and some of the particular functionality as well. Now, what I want to do here now is just quickly come out of the pack here and just give you a quick demo of BlackLine. So let me just drag my screen up here a second. Now here I'm logged in here as a system admin. Now I've got all of the roles. This is our partner instance that I'm in just now, but again, also I want to focus on the matching. So maybe just to give you a bit of a flavor for how this works. So I've created an example, which I'll pop up specifically for this. So in here, I have a couple of data tables that I've loaded in. So we've got an external and an internal transaction list. Now, if I click into this, just to quickly show you the table itself. So there's my data effectively. The first 4 columns here are all kind of BlackLine driven, and I'll come back to these. But effectively, my data file starts here. So I've got a client reference, a transaction date, a transaction reference, an amount, and a currency. And then what I've done, and unfortunately I won't have time to show you this today, but I've also done some enrichments in here effectively to get a US dollar conversion rate. And then you can see effectively the US dollar rate within here. And then there's some other information here just on the right-hand side around comments and anything else as well. Now, as I say, that's the table. The internal one is effectively exactly the same. Now, they don't need to be in a set format. This is where BlackLine is going to provide some functionality. And when I was talking about some of the challenges, I was talking about, IT can sometimes be a bit of a blocker to this type of project. Fundamentally, in BlackLine for transaction matching, we can take the file in any format that you've got it just now, whether it's got 10 columns, 100 columns, anything like that. So as I say, there's not necessarily that requirement to build something that's standard or, for BlackLine. BlackLine will be able to suck in that information in kind of any format. Now, so as I say, there's the two tables that we've got. Now, within here, and I'm still seeing in here within the system admin role, so I've got this match set up, which is just called webinar. And again, it was just a demonstration for today. Now, this is I'm going to say this is where the kind of the magic happens, I guess, around the kind of the matching process. Now, preparers have the same view for this. They just are not able to edit it in the same way that I am as an admin within the system. But if I quickly just run through the screen a little bit just to explain it. So we've got the match engine itself. So this is the actual matching. When I want it to run now as an admin, I've got the ability to run it ad hoc. Now, in a practical sense, if this was live, we would have a schedule, for this, and it would effectively run in line with the imports. So, we want to import the data at 9 o'clock in the morning. We want to run the match test at 9:30. So effectively, the data is then available for the end users at say 10 o'clock, so they can actually go and perform, their process. We've also got match transactions in here. Now, one of the really good things about BlackLine is the the audit trail or the visibility for around that kind of matching process. So if I click into this one just now, it's going to show me the 4 transactions that are matched. So I can see the rules that have matched this. So these bottom 3 have been matched on date, amount, currency, and reference, and they're a 1-to-1 match. And then here, what I've got is another example, same criteria, but this time, rather than being a 1-to-1 match, it's a many-to-one match. So slightly different, just broken up transactions basically on one side. We do have the ability to go to a more detailed view within here if somebody wants to look at that level where you can see the individual matches. So here, for example, is the many-to-one. So I've got 3 transactions for 100 each sitting on the kind of the internal side. And then on the external side, there's the 300. And, the ones at the bottom here are more of the 1-to-1 kind of match. Now, if I back up out of here a second. Oh, sorry. 2 minutes. Back in here. So yeah, and then what I can also do in here, if I click into the actual match ID, BlackLine's then able to provide me, exactly which fields, and you'll see those highlighted in blue, where the actual matching has occurred. And again, there's no limits around the number of columns or the number of criteria that we can have, around that particular kind of match piece as well. Now, if I come right back out of here. I've then got my unmatched transactions, so it's the ones that effectively haven't been picked up by the rules. Now you'll see here we've got a couple of sides here. So we've got a list of all our internal transactions and also the external ones as well. Now I'm aware that I'm in here as a system admin. The preparer view is exactly the same as what you're seeing in here just now. But as part of this little demo, I also want to just build a pass real quickly just to show you, how easily it is kind of done. Now, what you'll see here within my data, so I'm trying to match on the date, the reference, the amount, and the currency. And you'll see I've got a couple of examples here. Now, there's one of them there, where effectively that could be a match, but for whatever reason, I don't have a transaction reference here on the right-hand side. So as a preparer, as much as I'm in here as system admin, I can actually perform that match manually. So you'll see those 2 transactions have actually disappeared from here. Now, what you'll see is there's another example of exactly the same thing. So we have a value of 1,000, a value of 1,000 here on the left-hand side as well. But again, no transaction reference. Now, as a preparer, I don't want to have to go and click through those every time. There must be something smarter to do. Now the answer to that is effectively to go and build another rule. Now I want to show you this, quickly show you how quick it is to actually build a rule within the match set. So there's the 3 rules I've got set up just now. So there's my 1-to-1 match, there's my many-to-1 match, and then the opposite side of that, which is the 1-to-many match. Now, in that example, as I said, I just want to try and match on the date, amount, and currency, and not the reference, because that reference is effectively blank. So what I'm going to do is quickly here just clone it. I don't have to go and key it all in again. I can then click into, and I'm then able to make the changes. So as I say, this time I'm going to remove the reference. I'm just going to change my description to start with. I'll remove the clone off the end. Now, because I'm not matching in all 4 criteria here, I'm going to actually just make it a suggested match. Now, there is some naming convention here, just best practice, which I'm kind of following as well. But effectively, what I'm going to do is click the suggested this time. If I scroll further down, I can then see, there's my transaction reference. I'm not interested in this as a bit of criteria any longer. So I'm taking it off. So I'm just looking at the transaction date, amount, currency, and then I'm going to hit save. Now, what we'll see here is that rule has now appeared at the bottom of the list. If I click on the top here, what you'll see is there's the 4 that were already automatically matched. There's the manual one that I've done. If I trigger the match engine, and now this will take 30 seconds or so to run, I've got the ability to see it. This is also from a prepare perspective, so they can see this, albeit in a live environment. This would be automated or scheduled. So I can now see that it's done. And what you can now see is that I've now picked up 2 suggested matches. So if I click into this, this is the same screen that we saw for the automatic matches. And again, it's then just effectively asking me a question. The system thinks this could be a match based on that criteria. And then what it's looking for me as a preparer, or in this case, as a system admin, just to effectively confirm it. Again, I can click into the match ID and pick up, I can see the cells highlighted in blue here, which effectively cover off the kind of the match criteria. I've then got the ability, as a preparer or as a system admin as I'm in just now, just to approve these matches. So maybe I want to approve the first one, and maybe actually the second one isn't quite right, so I'm going to unmatch it. And effectively, we can then go back to the match set, back to our unmatched transactions, and what you'll see is effectively I'm now, one set of transactions lower down here, and I'm now left with effectively, what's left within here. So that's kind of like how the matching works. Now I'm conscious of time. I've only got a couple of minutes left. What I want to quickly show is just in terms of how we link this to a reconciliation. So I've got one reconciliation assigned to me as a preparer. So if I go and click into this reconciliation, now this isn't going to show the same example I've got just with with the match transactions. It's actually coming from a kind of different match set. But in this example, I've got a GL balance of 82,000 that I need to explain. I've got this kind of match set box at the top here. I can drill into each of these categories and effectively see the same screen that I saw before. But what I'm really interested in is really the unmatched from here. So I can click on the unmatched. I will then see effectively the unmatched tables, and I'm then able to effectively pull these items across onto the face of the reconciliation. So I've just ticked both of them here. I can go to the actions and I can create an item. I'll just create single items just in the interest of time, and I'll mark them as timing. Now, if I go back to the reconciliation, what you'll now see is I've now pulled across those items onto the face of the reconciliation. It's then explained effectively not unidentified difference. Okay, there's a 90 cents out. Just in terms of there is a tolerance on this, so 90 cents I'm allowed to complete the reconciliation. But as I say, it's just pulling across that information onto the face of the reconciliation. That process can also be automated through a job. So effectively, we can schedule something at the end of the month that effectively pulls all the open transactions or unmatched transactions onto the face of the rec, and that can effectively be done in bulk. So rather than the end users have to click into these screens, effectively they're there, and the users can actually start to, effectively complete the reconciliation. There's also some more advanced options around auto certification and whether we make these items editable. So again, through the matching, we can actually drive some automation around the reconciliations. I appreciate we're bang on half past when this was due to finish. I want to just quickly show one other thing, which is just around some of the reporting. And as I mentioned in some of the earlier slides, the BlackLine reporting is quite honestly fantastic. We can report on all sorts of things. Now, in this example, I've just got a matched and an unmatched report. I'm just going to quickly click into it. So here, for example, is the unmatched report. So I can see everything that's effectively associated. So I'm seeing both the internal and the external side. I can see the references and so on as well. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to show you when I was in the actual item, but we're able to add effectively action items to the transactions and effectively allow some follow up, and we're able to then to report on some of that as well. So we all know things go wrong from time to time, but the real key thing is how to ultimately, what steps are we taking to try and resolve those as well. So say that's the unmatched, and then here we've also got a matched version as well. Same format. The key difference is here we're actually seeing a bit more detail around the match itself. So we see the match ID, we see the match type, and then who effectively has done the matching. So there's the one I did kind of manually there as well. And again, we can see all the match criteria as well. So all of the information is there as well. So yeah, and I apologize because I appreciate we're out of time. I don't think there's been any questions. What I'll maybe just quickly do, just to flip back just to the pack, I just want to cover off maybe some next steps. Now, I appreciate this was a little bit of a kind of whirlwind through this. Sorry, just now. Here, so just in terms of any next steps, if there are any questions, I don't think anything's been raised during the call or anything, then do please reach out to myself or Zach. Happy to answer any of those questions or provide a bit more of a kind of detailed demonstration, but maybe a bit more bespoke towards your organisation. And ultimately, Carol as well will also share the recording. So if you want to watch this back, then by absolutely you can do so as well. So we'll get that out either today or tomorrow as well. Okay. Carol, is there anything else from your side you want to cover?